Papa Francisco convocou bispos de 8 países que são invadidos pela Amazônia para um sínodo no Vaticano. É o caminho para a Igreja Católica se transformar no maior anteparo à devastação da floresta.
O próximo grande evento para os bispos de todo o mundo em Roma é o Sínodo para a Amazônia. É uma reunião para discutir sobre esta região do planeta e permitirá que sua voz seja ouvida.
O Papa Francisco já deu as linhas desse discurso em janeiro de 2018, em Porto Maldonado, no Peru. Ele disse que a Amazônia deve levar em conta as necessidades de quem lá mora. E para isso ele deu nome a quase todos os bois da floresta, os grupos econômicos de petróleo, gás, madeira, ouro e monoculturas agroindustriais.
Existe uma porta de trabalho de base que mobiliza muita gente, é essa. Não começa pela teologia da libertação, não, que isso assusta muita gente. Começa pelo tema socioambiental. Agora, entre os sinais dos tempos, vem aí em outubro o Sínodo Panamazônico. Isso é muito importante. Nós nos mobilizarmos, aproveitar este importantíssimo evento que irrita profundamente o governo Bolsonaro.
Ao fincar estaca no discurso ambiental, o Papa também se firma como uma liderança contra a direita mundial e seus principais porta-vozes. O mais estridente deles é Steve Bannon, o ex-marqueteiro de Donald Trump, que começou a implicar com o Papa quando ele, na campanha americana de 2016, disse que uma pessoa que só pensa em construir muros onde quer que estejam e não em construir pontes não é um cristão. Conselheiro do bolsonarismo, Bannon disse recentemente que o Papa transformou a Igreja Católica num partido político, um partido que é contra a mudança climática e é braço do marxismo cultural da teologia da libertação.
Na Pontifícia Universidade Gregoriana de Roma, os responsáveis pela organização deste sínodo explicaram como está indo o trabalho preparatório. Mais de 260 reuniões já foram realizadas em 9 países. Essas reuniões incluíram líderes indígenas da Amazônia, ONGs trabalhando na Amazônia, bem como missionários e bispos.
As únicas instituições públicas que estão ali, o Exército e a Igreja. São as únicas instituições públicas que estão ali a serviço daquela população. Porém, dizer, por exemplo, que nós não tenhamos todos os dados, claro, ninguém pode dizer que tem todos os dados. O próprio Exército não pode dizer que tem todos os dados. Não tem, quer dizer, cada um tem certamente dados que lhe interessam, mas sobretudo mais esses dados ele tem. O importante, de fato, é que a gente, num certo momento, talvez precise juntar esses dados todos. Porém, né, no caso do sínodo, por ser um sínodo, eu pelo menos entendo muito bem, porque na escuta das bases que nós fizemos, esse processo da escuta, que chama também de consulta, do qual se originou depois esse instrumento de trabalho, que na verdade é uma síntese dessa escuta.
O documento a que o Kenneth se referia.
Que a igreja hoje entende de que ela também, por sua própria fé, ela tem que cuidar da casa comum, porque Deus criou essa casa comum e a entregou para que nós a cuidássemos. Então, a igreja também sabe que ela tem como função também isso faz parte da sua missão. Mas eu repito, eu entendo isso, mas não se pode incluir mais. Por exemplo, quando se diz no sínodo, não será chamado, não será convidado nenhum militar das forças militares de qualquer desses 9 países, e nem
políticos com mandato.
Políticos com mandato.
Brazil's popular conservative president Jair Bolsonaro, nicknamed Trump of the Tropics, is fighting both the fires and the Marxist policies of his predecessors. But his main political opposition is coming from liberal senior Catholic churchmen like Cardinal Claudio Hummas. Hummas has attacked Bolsonaro politically as doing the work of colonialism and exploiting the poor. In the theological arena, Hummas will be attempting to liberalize church teaching at the Synod in Rome this October, and he's weaponizing care of the Amazon rainforest to do so. Critics are blasting Hummas as little else than a socialist, exploiting the fires to advance Marxism as well as neo-pagan spirituality.
O encontro tem preocupado o governo brasileiro. O sínodo, na visão de alguns militares da reserva que assessoram o presidente, teria a intenção de internacionalizar a Amazônia.
Nós aqui que moramos em São Paulo, nós dependemos da região amazônica e nós dependemos dos 3 rios que correm verticalmente na região amazônica. Nós temos o rio Amazonas, nós temos um rio aéreo que transporta mais água que o rio Amazonas, com os seus afluentes, e nós temos um rio chamado Reis, que corre debaixo, tem outro rio que corre lá embaixo. Então, se as nossas florestas forem destruídas e queimadas, tudo isso vai acabar.
O evento teve casa cheia e contou com a presença ilustre do cardeal Dom Cláudio Hummas, que é relator geral do Sínodo da Amazônia.
O governo brasileiro pediu para ter um assento nesse encontro, mas o Vaticano disse não. Eles não querem representante nem do governo brasileiro nem de nenhum outro país. A cruzada do Papa Francisco é global. A pauta ambiental é transversal e tem uma adesão inconteste na sociedade, principalmente entre os jovens. A aliança do Papa com os povos da floresta o fortalece na frente contra nacionalismos e intolerâncias em todo o mundo. Só falta saber como é que tudo isso, junto e misturado, cabe no púlpito das igrejas.
We share a common future.
I am growing up in a world that is more and more divided. Sikhism teaches us that no one is my enemy, no one is a foreigner, and with all I am at peace.
I'm growing up in a world that encourages hatred more than ever. Buddhism teaches us hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. So let's transform conflict and care for our common future.
A Wall Street, principal rua do centro financeiro de Nova York, foi tomada por manifestantes.
United will never be defeated.
E lá estava ela, Greta Thunberg, a sueca de apenas 16 anos, que se tornou inspiração para milhares de jovens e adultos também.
They have a chance.
Os governantes podem assumir a liderança e provar que realmente nos ouvem. Vamos fazer com que eles nos ouçam, disse Greta para a multidão.
We will make them hear us.
A ativista está nos Estados Unidos para participar da Conferência do Clima da ONU, que começa amanhã. E hoje o movimento iniciado por ela se espalhou por mais de 150 países. Na Bolívia, os manifestantes se amarraram a árvores. Na África, o protesto aconteceu nas ruas de Joanesburgo. Em Nova Delhi, capital da Índia, os cartazes diziam: lute pelo nosso futuro. No Brasil, os protestos foram convocados em 20 estados, mas a adesão foi baixa. Na Europa, os protestos aconteceram em vários países. Gritos ecoaram pelas ruas de Paris, na França. Já na Alemanha, 80 mil pessoas foram até o portão de Brandemburgo, em Berlim. A pressão surtiu efeito e hoje o governo alemão aprovou um novo pacote de proteção climática, que deve destinar o equivalente a 200 bilhões de reais até 2023 para a causa. Na Ásia, manifestações foram registradas em Hong Kong e nas Filipinas.
Refuses to even acknowledge the reality of climate change.
Climate change and our environmental challenges.
To address the climate disaster facing the nation and our world.
Preventing climate change from getting even worse.
Climate change is real.
For dealing with the crisis of climate change.
So let's do a little background here, shall we? Because this deception of climate change needs to be exposed. First, not that long ago, the Marxist crowd was not actually calling it climate change. The popular term among them was global warming. So the Marxist crowd had to change the label because global warming simply wasn't corresponding to the people's lived experience. The linchpin of the Marxist argument about climate change is not that the climate is changing, but that humans are causing it. We are responsible. Like their father, the devil, Marxists hate human life as a general concept, and most particular individual humans, except themselves, of course.
The founder of the Weather Channel. The Weather Channel should know something about the climate. John Coleman says, global warming is the greatest scam in history. How deep are the U.S. Catholic bishops into this? For the past few years, they've been getting very deep in it, neck deep. In 2006, the USCCB launched the Catholic Coalition on Climate Change. That's a program designed to support the bishops' so-called environmental justice initiatives. Environmental justice, if you see that term, head for the hills. No one can make the argument that the climate change movement in its current manifestation is anything but hostile to Christianity and Christian truths. There are three different goals here that the various agents of climate change have. Population control, global governmental cooperation, and earth worship. These are three different crowds now, remember. They don't necessarily have much to do with each other, except they all fit nicely. This idea of global warming and climate change fits the agenda for each of them to advance their own agendas. Now, they don't care about the others, but like we said, they dovetail together very nicely. They're all intertwined with each other. The shortest route to achieving each of their individual goals is supporting the hysteria of global warming. Earth worshipers preach that the earth itself is a living entity with an intelligence of its own, an actual living being. While they don't offer scientific evidence, because that's not their area, they don't care about offering scientific evidence, they do offer religious claims that this is a legitimate religion and should be treated like one. They even have a name for this earth god, or goddess, Gaia. Gaia is an old Greek goddess. In fact, one proponent of the earth is God theology is Sir James Lovelock, who wrote in his 2006 book, The Revenge of Gaia, he writes, just as the human body uses a fever to fight off an infection, Gaia is raising her temperature to expel a harmful parasite. Humans. On the current trajectory, the human population will be reduced to a few breeding pairs by the end of this century. There are now even prayers to the earth. One line from one of the prayers goes just like this. On behalf of the human race, I ask forgiveness for having injured you. Forgive us, Mother Earth. That's from a student textbook on how to pray to the earth. And don't think this thought process is confined to the ravings of some esoteric tree huggers and witches and pagan worshipers. The following was said by Mikhail Gorbachev, head of Green Cross International. Nature is my God. To me, nature is sacred. Trees are my temples, and forests are my cathedrals. Many of the Green parties, you hear about this a little bit in America, it's much more widespread in Europe, there's a reason for that. Many of the Green parties have deep, deep connections to the former communist regimes, because when the communist regimes collapsed at the beginning of the 1990s, late 80s and early 90s, those guys didn't just vaporize. They didn't just go off and start farming. They scattered, and they began to see that the Green Party, this green mentality, was a way to get government control and grab back their power. So many of these people went and invaded the Green parties and took over their leadership. Where did the former communists go? They didn't disappear. They went into the Green Party movement. The whole earth worship, global warming, climate change, government carbon tax, depopulation crowd has been actively working to enlist religions into their camp for a number of years now. They need to give their work sort of the air of respectability, and they seek to do that in part by co-opting religions in their program, in their great big scheme, in their movement. And of course, there's already some existing background. It's already there for them to begin to deal in this argument, in this area, and make the argument that, we should be good stewards of creation. We've all heard that. Of course we should be. No Catholic, no Christian, and other world religions, but certainly in the Judeo-Christian, nobody's going to say, no, don't be a good steward of creation. We don't have a responsibility. Of course we have a responsibility to take care of creation. But to this end, to co-opt religion into the plan, in 1990, Prince Philip, he of want to come back and be killer virus fame, said that a major goal of the Green movement was to get religious leaders involved so as to give the whole movement a spiritual imperative. The main point, however, is this. Religion places God first, while environmentalism places the earth first. There is a fundamental philosophical difference between environmentalism and religion. They have one small little overlay, and that's that religion recognizes creation needs to be protected. It does not elevate creation to the level of the divine, as we have heard. This should sound like the same old story, shouldn't it? Not much has changed since the garden, substituting creation in place of the Creator. A note went out of the office 2 years ago, suggesting that the homily for Sunday that coincided with Earth Day be a homily on climate change. The website for the CCCC has an area, that's the bishops' group, the environmental group, has an area for parishes where suggested petitions for Mass are provided. So here we are at the sacrifice of the Holy Mass, where we're praising God, involved in the sacrifice at Calvary, brought back to that. And what are you hearing from the pulpit? Well, here's one of the prayers. O Lord, help us to use our technological inventiveness to undo the damage we have done to your creation and to sustain your gift of nature. We pray to the Lord. At one point, the bishop's website gives a ringing endorsement, page after page, link after link, to where? Back to the IPCC, the UN group that's pushing all of this stuff, right there on the bishop's homepage. That's the controversial body, remember, that's pushing all this stuff and man-made global warming.
I am here to say our house is on fire. According to the IPCC, we are less than 12 years away from not being able to undo our mistakes. In that time, unprecedented changes in all aspects of society needs to have taken place, including a reduction of our CO2 emissions by at least 50%. And please note that those numbers do not include the aspect of equity, which is absolutely necessary to make the Paris Agreement work on a global scale.
Within the next decade or so, we are going to pass a number of tipping points, beyond which it's going to be very difficult to recover.
Reckless burning of fossil fuels, the destruction of the forests, pollution of the ocean. How is it possible that the most intellectual being that ever walked the planet is destroying its only home?
Since the 1970s, we lost 60% of vertebrate species. If we look at insects, we lost 80%. As we lose species, what we also lose is the capacity of the natural systems to really provide the services that allow us to function.
One of the consequences of living in great cities, in great masses, is that we are cut off from that natural world. If you lose that sense of wonder, you've lost one of the most important things in your life.
The human race produces more waste than it really should.
We only recycle 9% of all plastic. That means that unless it's been burnt, every single piece of plastic ever made still exists on our planet.
The crisis of biodiversity with climate change, it's interlocked with many other global crises that we are seeing. Migration and climate refugees, political crisis, and perhaps a moral crisis.
We've stolen our children's future, we're still stealing it, and we must get together now.
When I first started the school strike for the climate, I never would have imagined that it was going to be this big. It's over 100,000 children from all around the world.
God is the creator of heaven and earth. God has created every human being equally, with a dignity no one may ever question. With this conference, we want to set a worldwide sign against divisions that lead to hate and violence. We want to explore ways to peace, justice, and a responsible way of dealing with non-human nature as our co-creation.
And the fundament for all is that we are human beings. We have differences, we have different religions, we have different political options, but we are human beings. And we have one creator who has made us. And that is very, very important for the future of the world.
Events and developments around us in the last decade or so have shown that our human community is at a critical crossroads. Our future can no longer be taken for granted. This calls for radical change of conviction and attitude on many fronts. First, on the political front, the ambition of great nations and empires must give way to a global community of shared well-being of the human family.
We are also experiencing what might be called a meta-crisis of our modern order. The order that lies behind the United Nations and the agreements our states have made on human rights, the rule of law, and international trade. We can promote shared well-being by throwing ourselves behind the Interfaith Rainforest Initiative that is serving all by protecting the rainforests and the indigenous peoples who are their caretakers. The entire web of life depends on the rainforests and their original caretakers. The common good also includes the earth with its air, water, soil, and web of life. These latter serve and call all of us to a shared and grateful responsibility. Combining our multi-religious insights on shared well-being with these groundbreaking empirical insights will provide an especially rich base for our common action for positive peace.
It's about defending our national security. The evidence is clear. The national security experts have spoken. This is a national security issue. And for many of us, it's a moral issue. If you believe as I do that this is God's creation, this planet, we have a moral responsibility to be good stewards of it. But even if you don't subscribe to that, you know we have a moral responsibility to future generations to pass on this planet in a responsible way.
House of Representatives has passed its first major piece of legislation on the issue of climate change, a topic many believe is bound to dominate the 2020 elections. The bill passed by the Democrat-controlled House aims at preventing the U.S. from withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement.
The Labour Party leader called on the Parliament to declare a climate emergency and set new policies that would set off a wave of action from parliaments and governments around the globe.
We have no time to waste. We are living in a climate crisis that will spiral dangerously out of control unless we take rapid and dramatic action now. This is no longer about a distant future. We're talking about nothing less than the irreversible destruction of the environment within our lifetimes of members of this House.
In summary, as we step back and take a look at the great big picture here, what do we see? We see an enormous creature with many tentacles advancing various agendas like population control, earth worship, global governance, even animal rights. Now, to be sure, as we've said, each one has its own agenda, and each one, they kind of support each agenda under this global warming banner. But what they all absolutely share in common is what all movements and regimes opposed to eternal truths have in common. This quote from Peter Singer, who is the founder of Animal Rights, is a nice little summary. Christianity is our foe. If animal rights is to succeed, we must destroy the Judeo-Christian religious tradition. Now, given the intricate, decades-long unfolding and development of this whole movement, there can only be one source behind an evil which seeks to kill or limit the human race and to raise to the level of divine mere creation. Their ultimate leader is not Al Gore, it's not Mikhail Gorbachev, it's not Bill Gates, it's not the UN. These are ultimately, these and all of their followers are ultimately what Lenin used to call useful idiots. They are stooges for the enemy, who has since from the moment of creation sought to elevate creation above the Creator in the mind and heart of man. We know who that is. He's who the book of Revelation calls the one who deceives the whole world. No one can make the argument that the climate change movement in its current manifestation is anything but hostile to Christianity and Christian truths. When a movement of this size and this dimension and this degree of hostility to the faith becomes this powerful and influential, the faithful don't really need much more evidence. The hidden agenda here is easily recognized because it is the same agenda that it has always been. We know who is behind this movement. Look at the results. By their fruits, you will know them. God love you. Thank you for coming.